Picture two men. One of them spent his entire life waking before dawn, driving to work in a used car, clipping coupons, and living in the same modest house he bought decades ago. His neighbors barely knew his name. His co-workers saw him as a quiet, unremarkable man who fixed cars and swept floors for pennies above minimum wage. His name was Ronald Reed. He was a janitor. When he died in 2014 at the age of 92, the world was stunned. Ronald Reed left behind an $8 million fortune, split generously between his local library and hospital. He had never managed a hedge fund. He had never earned a six-figure salary. He had simply saved, patiently invested in dividend stocks he believed in, and waited. For decades. Now picture the second man. Richard Fusconi was everything the first man was not. Harvard-educated, a Merrill Lynch executive who had climbed to the very peak of the financial world. A man who had managed billions of dollars, advised powerful institutions, and was celebrated as a genius of modern finance. But in 2008, when the financial crisis struck, Richard Fusconi was forced to declare bankruptcy. He had borrowed heavily to fund a lavish lifestyle, a 18,000-square-foot house, enormous debts, and a belief that his intelligence would always protect him. It didn't. A janitor outperformed a Harvard-trained financial executive. Not because he was smarter, not because he had better information or access or opportunity, but because of something far simpler and far more powerful: behavior. This is the central truth of Morgan Housel's masterwork, The Psychology of Money. Financial success is not a hard science. It is a soft skill. And the softest, most overlooked skill of all is this: your ability to manage your emotions, your ego, and your relationship with enough. Today on Mindful Books, we're going to walk through 5 of the most transformative ideas from this book. Each one has the power to change not just how you think about money, but how you live. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let's begin. Chapter 1. No one's crazy why your financial decisions make perfect sense to you. Have you ever looked at someone else's financial decision and thought, that makes absolutely no sense? Maybe it was a friend who bought an expensive sports car on credit, or a family member who keeps their life savings in cash under the mattress, or someone from a wealthy country who seems to spend recklessly, while someone from poverty is obsessive about every single dollar. Here's what Morgan Housel wants you to understand. No one is crazy. Every financial decision a person makes is a product of their personal history, the era they grew up in, the economic conditions they experienced in their formative years, the lessons their parents taught them, and the fears they carry deep inside. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Think about someone who grew up during the Great Depression. For them, banks were terrifying institutions that could collapse overnight and take your life savings with them. Of course, they'd rather keep cash at home. That's not irrational. It's survival instinct shaped by lived experience. Now think about a millennial who came of age during the 2008 financial crisis. They saw homeowners lose everything. They entered the workforce in the worst job market in a generation. Is it any wonder that many of them are deeply skeptical of the housing market and traditional wealth-building advice? The most important takeaway here is this: before you judge someone else's financial behavior, or before you judge your own, ask yourself, what experiences shaped this thinking? Because what looks irrational from the outside is almost always perfectly rational from the inside. This is the beginning of financial compassion, and it starts with yourself. Chapter 2. Luck and Risk. The invisible forces behind every success story. We live in a culture obsessed with stories of triumph. We love to study successful people and extract the formula, the habits, the mindsets, the hustle. We believe that if we simply replicate what they did, we can achieve what they achieved. But there is something we almost never talk about: luck. Consider Bill Gates. He is, without question, one of the most brilliant and determined entrepreneurs in history. But here is a fact that often goes unmentioned. Gates attended one of the only high schools in the entire world in the 1960s that had a computer. He did not choose this. He was lucky enough to be born into the right family, in the right city, at the right time. Now consider his childhood friend, Kent Evans. Equally brilliant, equally driven. He died in a mountaineering accident before he ever had the chance to build anything. Not because of poor decisions, not because he lacked intelligence or ambition, because of risk, the random, indiscriminate kind that can end a story before it ever begins. Nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. This doesn't mean effort doesn't matter. It does, enormously. But Housel is asking us to hold two truths at once. Individual agency matters, and forces beyond our control shape outcomes in ways we rarely acknowledge. Why does this matter for you? Because when you fail, you may be harder on yourself than you deserve. And when you succeed, you may give yourself more credit than is accurate. Both distortions are dangerous. The mindful approach is radical honesty. Yes, I worked hard. And yes, I also got some breaks that others didn't. This humility doesn't diminish your success. It makes you wiser, more resilient, and far less likely to repeat risky behaviors that you mistakenly attributed to skill. Chapter 3. Never enough. The most dangerous word in personal finance. Rajat Gupta was the CEO of McKinsey & Company, one of the most prestigious and powerful positions in global business. He had built a career most people could only dream of. He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And then he threw it all away. Why? Because he wanted to be a billionaire. He saw the billionaires he advised and could not bear that they had more. So he began leaking insider trading information to a hedge fund manager. He was convicted, imprisoned, and left with a legacy of disgrace. This is the trap of never enough, and it is one of the most seductive, destructive forces in human psychology. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Comparison is the thief of financial peace. When we look at those who have more, we feel poorer, even if we are, by any objective measure, wealthy. Social media has supercharged this ancient instinct. We are now constantly exposed to the highlight reels of people living lives that appear more abundant, more glamorous, more satisfying than our own. The antidote is one of the oldest virtues in human wisdom: enough. Enough is not settling. Enough is not giving up. Enough is the courageous, conscious decision to define your own standard of sufficiency and to stop letting the world define it for you. It means knowing what you value deeply and being willing to stop before you cross the line that costs you everything else. Ask yourself today, what is enough for me? Not for Instagram, not for your neighbors, not for the version of yourself trying to impress people you barely know. What is enough for the life you actually want to live? Chapter 4. Confounding Compounding. The quiet force that rewrites everything. Warren Buffett has been investing since the age of 10. He is, as of this recording, worth over $100 billion. Here is what almost no one talks about. Approximately 97% of Warren Buffett's net worth was accumulated after his 65th birthday. Let that land for a moment. Buffett's real superpower is not his investing genius, although that is exceptional. His real superpower is time. He has been compounding for over 75 years. He did not panic in crashes. He did not chase trends. He simply allowed time to do what time does best. Good investing is not necessarily about earning the highest returns. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can stick with and which can be repeated for the longest period of time. Compounding is a phenomenon that our brains are genuinely not wired to intuitively understand. It is exponential, not linear. And that means the early years feel almost meaningless, small numbers growing slowly, while the later years feel almost miraculous. $1 invested at age 20 is worth exponentially more than $1 invested at age 40. Not twice as much, not 3 times as much, sometimes dozens of times as much. The difference is simply time. This is one of the most encouraging truths in this book, because it means that the single most powerful thing you can do for your financial future is not to be smarter or luckier. It's to start, today, with whatever you have, and then to have the patience to stay the course. The quiet miracle of compounding doesn't reward the brilliant. It rewards the consistent. Chapter 5. Getting Rich versus Staying Rich. 2 completely different games. Building wealth and preserving wealth are not the same skill. In fact, they often require opposite mindsets. To get rich, you sometimes need to take calculated risks. You need optimism, conviction, and the courage to act boldly when others hesitate. But to stay rich, you need something entirely different. You need humility. You need the acknowledgement that some of what made you successful was luck, and that luck can turn. You need a kind of healthy paranoia that keeps you from becoming overconfident. And above all, you need frugality and the discipline to avoid behaviors that could undo everything you've built. Survival is the ability to show up tomorrow, next year, and for decades after, when others have been forced to give up and move on. The financial world is littered with stories of people who built extraordinary wealth and then lost it. Not because markets turned on them, but because their own behavior changed once they felt secure. They took on too much debt. They stopped being careful. They confused a bull market with their own genius. The people who stay wealthy understand something profound. The game never ends. Every financial decision you make, you are either building a margin of safety or eroding it. Survival over the long term is not a passive thing. It is an active, daily commitment to living below your means, avoiding catastrophic risks, and remembering that no level of wealth makes you immune to ruin. If something from today's conversation has stirred something in you, a question, a new perspective, a quiet resolve, I want you to know that this is just the beginning. At Mindful Books, we believe that the right book, read at the right moment, can genuinely change a life. Every week, we sit with ideas that challenge us to think more deeply, live more intentionally, and build a relationship with money and with ourselves that is rooted in wisdom rather than fear. If that's the kind of company you want to keep, hit subscribe and ring that bell, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Leave a comment below and tell me which of today's 5 ideas landed most deeply for you. Was it the power of compounding? The danger of never enough? Or perhaps the quiet wisdom of Ronald Read, the janitor who outplayed Wall Street simply by being patient? Whatever it was, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, read deeply, live mindfully, and remember, the best investment you will ever make is in understanding yourself.